Hi, my dearest of family. Today we are going to be looking at the Neptune ingress chart. Now, I did make a video back 2024 about Neptune in the sign of Aries. So I highly recommend listening to that video. Go back, revisit, because I'm not going to be repeating certain type of things which has been said in that particular video. Today, I'm more like looking at what happens with the ingress chart itself. So what's happening on the sky on the day when Neptune actually ingresses into the sign of Aries. First of all, let me give you some key dates. So Neptune enters the sign of Aries on the 30th of March 2025, and it will be there until October 22nd, 2025. Then it's going to be going back into the sign of Pisces. And then we're going to have January 26th, 2026, when Neptune finally enters the sign of Aries until May 22nd, 2038. And then it will be also in the sign of Aries between October 21st to March 23rd, 2039. And then after it will fully ingress into the next sign, which is going to be Taurus. So I will be making a video also about how Neptune affects you on a personal level, how it affects you on a collective level, and even we're going to be looking at the history of Neptune as well in the last 1,000 years. Because, of course, we are trying to kind of export certain type of patterns. But today's aim is just to focus on the ingress chart itself. So idealistically speaking, we should be looking at two ingress charts because, as I said, it's going to be back and forth in the sign of Pisces to Aries. So, and then each of the period is going to be slightly bit different, but they are built on each other. So whatever goes down in the first ingress, that shows what to expect, not only in the next 1 year, but that's going to be the theme that we are going to start working on from 2026 January onwards. So definitely, if you would like more information about Neptune in Aries, I recommend listening to that video I made back in 2024. So please click on that and listen to it. By the way, it's also available on my website if you would like to look for it there. It's AstroViktor.com. And one announcement to make. I will be making a massive course about Saturn. One of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because Saturn will be shifting into the sign of Aries as well this year. And I can hear from many clients that Saturn, is a evil doer. So it looks like many of us are so afraid of Saturn. So I want to be reframing Saturn a little bit for everyone. And this is going to be a big course. So this is going to be 20 weeks. I'm going to be holding lectures about Saturn's meaning, for example, as the planet of karmic debt or as the planet of death and so forth. And then after we are going to be personalizing this. So we're going to be looking at Saturn in houses, Saturn in the signs, and Saturn in aspects. So altogether, yes, this is going to be a 20-week lecture. And this is kind of like a must for astrologer students or someone who wants to become an astrologer, or even if you are already an astrologer, you can have a lot of takeaways from this course. But if you just want to kind of get to know your chart a little bit better, you will be able to purchase individual lectures as well. So check it out on my website, AstroViktor.com. And by the way, it would be much appreciated if you signed up to my channel, subscribed, liked the video, even share the video with others, because potentially this might be something that gives your friends, your family members an insight how to navigate their life in the bestest form. And by the way, I would like to also introduce myself if you are new to my channel. My name is Victor. I have been doing astrology for 24 years. That is when my astrology journey started. I am doing this full time. I teach 3, 4 times a week, and I do 2 consultations a day as well. So I'm quite a busy bee. And I hope that one day we are going to be connecting maybe through a personal reading also. And on top of that, I'm also an author. I've already released 3 books. One of them is about vocational astrology. Another one is about my very latest book is about your personal finances. And there is also an aspect book available on my website as well. So check those out too. Now, let's see the chart. First off, I erected a chart for US because I wanted to see what was going to happen there. And I also looked at what is going to be happening in the UK as well. So in the US, as you can see, we've got actually a Taurus rising sign. So surely the topics are going to be money, finances, assets, what we have and what we give away to others. Giving away comes from the fact that the ruler of the rising sign is actually in Pisces in conjunction to Mercury. So that would talk to me about, for example, a peace talk, potentially, but there are going to be a lot of talks about inflation and potentially recession as well. Now, recession doesn't necessarily have got much to do um, with Pisces, but it has got a lot to do with Taurus, though. And when I look at the chart of England, they actually have got an Aries rising sign. So their attention will be a lot to do with individuality, the protection of the country, maybe potentially rebuilding their country as well. There potentially, I'm expecting a lot of structural changes within the royal family as well as in their political system. Why I assume that is because we do have got Mars in the sign of Cancer. And that's in the fourth house. So that's the protection of the land. That's the protection of our loved ones. And also it represents the housing market as well, which actually can indicate that the prices will start dropping there quite significantly, or it will get real heights where people are going to be struggling to buy their own homes. But I think it's going to be dropping, to be frank. So, by the way, because we are looking at the GMT time, therefore, it kind of represents what the world is going to be like with an Aries rising sign. And with an Aries rising sign, there is going to be a lot of fight going on. But typically, Aries and Mars in Cancer is the kind of like the individuation process. So what I'm seeing here is that potentially, the Commonwealth may be potentially going to be kind of like falling apart, or there are going to be people kind of walking out of certain type of unions. So the individuality as a country is going to be, I think, a big topic. Now, but also what we see in both charts, of course, that Mercury and Venus, Saturn, and the North Node are in the sign of Pisces. So it does show, because Pisces would be something to do with a closure, and Aries is the start of a new beginning. It does show to us that unfortunately the past is not necessarily going away. It's something that we're going to have to deal with. So it really looks to me that with an Aries rising sign, it's going to be a lot of new initiations happening, thinking that the past is going to walk away, but unfortunately it won't. It also shows to me that what we value and what we have, or what our own assets are, especially in the US, are going to be a major topic. And for example, what am I going to do with my lands? What am I going to do with my assets? And it looks like with that Piscean element, some of those have to be given away. Some of those have to be shared, and some are going to be a gain as well. And also, of course, when we see the US, we've got a Taurus rising sign. Therefore, we've got a Scorpio on the descendant. And Scorpio is the sign of threats, a sign of manipulation. So it's about giving and sharing. So it looks like that kind of like the dividing the assets, for example, or how much you support me and why don't you support me type of topics are going to be quite huge. And of course, having the ruler of Taurus in the sign of Pisces, it's kind of like giving up a certain type of a support. So as I said, the part, because it really feels like with Venus being in the sign of Taurus that we have got an unfinished business here. I mean, Mercury is actually retrograde. It's on 29 degree. And also Venus is retrograde as well, which is on 28 degree. So it really looks like that the actions that we took has got certain type of consequences. Often the ruler of the rising sign also, by the way, shows what happens to the government, not just as a country, but what happens to the government, what happens to the head of the government. And Pisces could actually represent certain type of like illnesses. So let's see how that plays out. But potentially we might see that unfortunately Trump might be experiencing certain type of health issues or even certain type of mental breakdowns as well. And this might be coming from the fact that he hasn't taken care of himself properly. So again, the past is kind of like catching up. And to be frank, this should have shown up already. So I don't know how his well-being is. I don't necessarily follow him much, but this could show that something has emerged already, but maybe hasn't been announced just yet. And of course, Venus being in the sign of Pisces, the ruler of the economy right now, it shows that we are going through a tremendous amount of healing when it comes to our economy. It's kind of like I'm trying to make my dollar stronger and so forth. But with Pisces, it could go to the extremes because Venus is exalted there. And exaltation sounds always really good, but before it gets better, unfortunately, it could show something like it's going to get worse as well. I'm a firm believer that from 2030-ish onwards, I think the world is going to be a better place. What I mean by better place is that, don't think that it's going to be a paradise, but it's going to be a lot better than 2020 and onwards. And, when we are going through a healing process, we cannot just escape from it. We have to do the healing so that we can actually move forward. And of course, in the world chart, having an Aries rising sign shows that the relationships that we are creating are going to be extremely important. But at the same time, it looks like it's a little bit volatile as well, especially because, again, that Mars and Pluto opposition are actually building up. And that's going to be important in the next English chart, but I'm going to come on to that. And of course, maybe with that Piscean element, we have got a lot of vision going on. But maybe it's not the year when we are going to be able to kind of carry out. We are just kind of like gently introducing the changes that we want to make or the vision that we've got. And then once the second ingress chart happens, it's going to become a lot more volatile. One of the reasons is because you will see in the second chart that we are going to be having a Pluto-Mars conjunction in the sign of Aquarius, which surely shows that there are going to be a lot of demonstrations, a lot of groups kind of like boiling their anger and so forth. So what I'm going to be doing on the screen is that you can see two charts next to each other. Okay, so one of them is going to be showing you the ingress of on the 30th of March, and the other one is going to be showing you the next year ingress so that you can actually follow what I'm talking about. So the other ingress is going to be happening, as mentioned earlier, in January 2026, and that looks like extremely important. So we have a dream about a new world, and that would be the very Piscean element. We have got a new political system. We've got a vision what to do with the money, for example, with the Taurus rising sign. Maybe we have got a vision of creation of a new world order. Maybe with an Aries rising sign, we have got a vision of strengthening our army. and be prepared. So it really looks like that the first chart is more about a preparation. We are getting ready for something. And in the second chart, as we see, we have got a lot of Aquarius energy. So we're upgrading something. There is a lot of social movements going on. We are fighting for our own freedom. Pluto Mars conjunction in the sign of Aquarius. That also shows a lot of social unrest, demonstrations, and all these type of things. And when we think about Aquarius, which is getting together, building a community, but also it shows innovation, knowledge, technological advancements. So it really feels like with initially an Aries rising sign, what we are working on is to strengthen our military system. And then we're going to start upgrading those from 2026 onwards. Now, on a personal level, it is on one hand showing that we need to be coming to terms of who we are, what we want, what we achieve, what we want to achieve with our lives, and also how to embrace our authentic self. So obviously what we see is we move from Pisces to Aries. So Pisces is often the victimhood and Aries is about the heroism. So it looks like that a lot of us need to get out of that mindset of being a victim of a system, for example. So it's all about how I'm going to be standing up for myself, how I'm going to be protecting my loved ones. And maybe with Pisces, we were helping a lot of people. And then with the sign of Aries, with Neptune being there, it's more about counting on the self. So there is a lot more ego-focused approach in the political system as well as in the individual level as well. It's kind of like help yourself and God will also help you type of mentality. And when I'm seeing Pluto Mars, which is a bit scary in the second ingress chart, that would talk to us about bravery, using force and strength to make something happening, forcing something down on the throat of people, because Aquarius represents people, giving platform, for example, to a new social media channel. That could be coming up with that also, giving platform to people to create a group. It's a group that comes together with a utopian vision. And Aquarius often represents political movement, especially with Mars and Pluto. And it doesn't go down quiet, surely. Just the reason being is because Mars in Aquarius is always kind of like prompting, let's go and fight. And also, it can talk to us about, for example, that crypto is going to get forced to become a new way of paying, for example, internationally. Mars is actually in sextile to Neptune in the second Ingress chart, yes. So it is again, we take an action because we have got a vision. And often what we do with Neptune, we do that in the name of the greater good. It's a little bit of like it's a selfless planet, just not in the sign of Aries though. And we don't want to hurt others with Neptune, but we might not be taking into account that actually there is going to be a lot of victim coming with that also. And of course, Neptune is the planet of healing as well. So Neptune in the sign of Aries will talk to us about having to heal the self, having to heal who we are as a nation, as an individual. But what I also noticed in the English chart is that Venus is on 14 degree of Aquarius in the second English chart. Now that's actually really interesting because that's the degree of the south node of the Neptune. Now, even not, you probably or probably you have heard about the south node and the north node, which is actually connected to the moon. But every single planet has got their own south node and north node as well. So the Neptune South Node will talk to us about past memories, karmic experiences around spirituality, karmic debts, ancestral problems. So it looks like a lot of people are going to be talking about the past, and a lot of people want to restore the past. So for example, oh, this land belongs to me, that is this way, that way, and so forth. And on an individual level, this is also just telling us that the past, the ancestral topics are going to be catching up to us. And, even it would indicate that South Node, Neptunian South Node and Venusian interest is that, unfortunately, it can feel like we are in a prison in the sign of Aquarius. So of course, what is Venus? It's about negotiations, relationships, and money. So money, the way it is in the past, is not here anymore. So surely we are going to be dealing with money in very different ways. And maybe this is bringing the topic of new ways of earning, new ways of paying the bills, or having to pay the debts back to someone as well. Whether we are talking about karmic debts or actually physical assets. But I can also imagine that lands are going to be sold to others just to kind of protect my own nation or country. So I'm seeing some merging, and Neptune actually represents merging as well. Venus being on the south node of Neptune, it looks like that certain type of ideal connections are about to be ending in the next potentially 3, 4 years. Remember that Venus is in the sign of Pisces in the first ingress chart on 28 degree, and it has got that connection to Mercury. So what I said about that was that there are peace talks, but it looks like those peace talks are actually kind of broken from 2026 onwards, just because we had this type of agreement with Neptune in the sign of Aries. We started seeing kind of like the peace talks going down and so forth. But with the South Node, we let go of that agreement in the sign of Aquarius. So if there are going to be contractual agreements coming up in 2025, I don't see them go too far. Probably it's going to be broken from 2026 onwards. Of course, Neptune moving into the sign of Aries could also indicate that there is going to be a new way of healing. And therefore, it might show a lot of improvement in the medical field. And of course, we are expecting that anyway. And also, it could even indicate that how the hospitalization and the pharmaceutical companies are going to be actually changing as well. Now, a couple of things that I noticed from a like an asteroid point of view. Then in the very first ingress chart, actually, Neptune is in square to Shiva. Um, and Shiva astrological number is 1170, in case you want to be looking that up. And Mars actually conjunct Minerva. Its astrological number is 93. So what is Shiva? Well, Shiva actually represents Far East, China, for example. It's actually a medical asteroid. It represents sound healing, sound waves, the ultrasound, so potentially we're gonna see quite a lot of advancements around sound healing or the way how we do ultrasound and so forth. I mean, we are all aware that computers and robots are going to be doing a lot of things, so I don't think I'm sharing anything new there. And of course, because Aries is something to do with migraine and blood-related matters, but also it's just the physical body and the physical strength as well. So we might see, for example, that from a dietary point of view, like these things that they are sticking on your body is going to be helping people to kind of lose weight and so forth. But Shiva also represents Chinese medicine and herbology. So it looks like more and more people are going to be turning towards that. And Shiva even represents allergies as well. And in the sign of Aries is kind of like the itchy skin or breakouts of the skin and so forth. So potentially I can imagine that one of the reasons why we're going to do it um, like the herbology and the Chinese medicine and even acupuncture and so forth, because more and more people are kind of going to be allergic to medications, like proper medications. And from a psychological point of view, by the way, Shiva also represents snakes as well. So that would be kind of like talking to me about that, it could be kind of like a snake infestation, of course, but it also could talk to us about that someone is kind of like biting into the medical industry. So maybe most of the like imagine that it's going to be like no central medical systems anymore. It's all based on insurances and so forth. And also just knowing that Shiva is the great destroyer. So it's in the sign of Capricorn. So it destroys a political system here. It destroys like a political world collapses here. So a fall a fall of an empire, a fall of a kingdom is going to be happening here. So, and let's say that in one country there is a kingdom at the moment, and then actually it's gonna go into like democracy and so forth. So also, as we see, we've got an Aries rising sign in the world chart, right? So Aries is about entitlement. It is pretty much about the fittest survive. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more narcissistic behavior as well, especially with Mars in the sign of Cancer, because we will protect the ones that matter, or we will protect our own countries rather than protecting others. And Mars is not only about attacking, especially in the sign of Cancer, we come up with some defense mechanism. So America seems to be defending its own resources with a Taurus rising sign. And the world is going to be kind of like protecting itself. Um, Mainly the topic is that, you know what, I can only count on myself. And Aries does represent kind of like the activists, with Neptune being there. This is a spiritual activist. This is a spiritual movement. And maybe it's a bold statement, but, because the Far East is coming up with Shiva, I'm just wondering if China is going to be rising to power. And, I want to mention when 3 years ago I made a video about the Ukraine and Russian um, situation. I mentioned that I think it's going to last for minimum 18 months. But what was really interesting that Asteroid China was on the rising sign. And back in the days, I mentioned that China somehow is at the background of all of these, or China will benefit from it. And then now having Shiva also connected to this Neptune ingress, so it might even indicate that China is going to be making a move. Now, the other asteroid that we talked about being prominent in this English chart is actually Minerva. So remember its astrological number is 93 in case you want to be looking up where Minerva is in your chart. So Minerva was the Roman goddess of wisdom, justice, strategy, but also she was the patron of arts. So the mythological origin of Minerva, also known as Athena in Greek astrology or Greek mythology, and basically she sprang from the head of Zeus, fully formed and armed. She embodies this warfare, but she comes up with a lot of strategy. So even Minerva indicates that we do have got some type of preparation going on, how to defend my own blood. But Minerva's placement in your chart shows where you might be having some strategic way of thinking, or where you use your knowledge quite effectively, or where you are kind of like having complex situations going on, which you can only sort out, for example, if you have got quite a lot of wisdom, but also you're going to be having to be graceful as well at the same time. So of course we are, when it's come from a justice point of view, obviously that's going to be quite Capricornian or Sagittarian or Libra related things. Now, some of the shadow side of Minerva is that we are rigid, we are holding on to outdated beliefs, we are overthinking, so we getting caught up in, in little details, and then we are struggling to take a decision. And also we can be very judgmental as well. So definitely there is a lot of strategy happening here with uh, Minerva. In case I have forgotten to mention, but Minerva is in conjunction to Mars. So Mars is the planet of war. So there is certain type of a preparation going on there for sure, but probably it's still in the background. And in case I've forgotten to mention, but Shiva is on 10 degree of Cancer. So now the reason why that is actually very important with, sorry, it's I might have made a mistake here. Sorry. No, Shiva is on 0 degree of Capricorn. Sorry about that. So that's 0 degree of Capricorn, and then of course it's in square to Neptune. Okay, so a couple of other things that potentially I wanted to talk to you about. So, as mentioned earlier, I have made pretty much of a long video about Neptune in the sign of Aries. But on a personal level, because obviously you are here, that you also want to know how it's going to be um, affect you, right? But it really feels like that it's going to be changing our society. And we are going to be having a cause to fight for. And I'm going to be honest, it is a vast topic, so I cannot just mention everything that I expect or see. Just the reason being is because, it's a very sensitive topic. But when I kind of thinking about Aries being the blood and Neptune is the ocean, it really looks like that the oceans are covered with, red colors. And therefore, I mean, it's a bit of a scary time, to be honest. But also on an individual level, it indicates that we all have to have a hero. We all have to have someone to look up to. We all have to have, kind of like someone to idealize. But the highest manifestation of Neptune in Aries, that you are your own hero. If we think about, what Aries archetype is, I mean, with Aries, I take actions to become a hero. I take actions to have power. And it's not enough anymore just to have a hope, because that's what Neptune represents. We're going to have to create the hopes. So imagine that Aries is kind of like a power surge, a power source. And often it is a representation that the power is going to be coming from certain type of endings, the endings of your own misery, for example. And when we give the power to others, such as to the government or something like that, then basically we have sacrificed our individuality. So it's the power of an individual that it really looks like that's going to be a major topic. And also on a personal level, it just indicates that you giving the power to your boss or to your partner and so forth, allowing them to victimize you, is going to be a huge topic for many of us. And maybe sometimes, having no power, because Aries is about vitality. If we are approaching things from like a passive aggressive way or point of view, or we are more on the lazy side, or we don't want to get into a fight because what happens if, I'm going to be disowned and so forth. That's a type of like power struggles as well. So I feel like this is going to be a little bit more cutthroat type of period, to be frank. So no more victimization, no more kind of like slavery, no more being your own enemy in a way. Being a victim means, it's not just the fact that someone attacks you on the streets. Being a victim can actually indicate that, you know what, I'm not going to be doing anymore what I am taught. And that's pretty much of an inner strength. Neptune can bring you a lot of positive things as well, though. So again, this is the awakening of spirituality on one hand. This is the awakening of the authentic self, that I'm not going to be putting my life in jeopardy for others. But sometimes that's the problem with Neptune, that it wants to be helping a lot of people. And maybe we are saying that it's not going to happen anymore. So who are we? That's a big question here. And Neptune here is going to, in a way, especially with Saturn being there, that it will try to solidify our sense of identity. It is trying to dissolve our ego. It is trying to tell us to put our ego aside. And sometimes it even represents that we have to take out the emotions of a situation and approach things in a more personal way or a more kind of like logical way as well. Imagine that, of course, Chiron is still in the sign of Aries, right? So we have been experiencing the pain of the self, for quite a long time. And um, beforehand, it was Uranus, which wanted to get us out of our comfort zone. So now Neptune is actually joining this also. So I really feel like that the aim here is that we all have to get a little bit, or not a little bit, but a lot stronger. Now, looking at just very briefly, the history, even though I wanted to I'm going to be making a separate video about that, but the very last time when we had Neptune in the sign of Aries was between 1861 to 1875, and it was in and out of Aries as well, of course. So you might want to be just thinking back what went down around that time. Um, because that might be giving us certain type of a clues of what to expect around this period. And by the way, that is the period when Uranus was also in the sign of Gemini as well, from 1858 to 1866. And then later on, of course, Uranus moved into the sign of Cancer. So there is a lot of similarities going on with the very last period as well. And we saw a lot of actions happening around that time. And often it happened with the church. So we had the Vatican that, kind of like declared um, something to do with the Pope. I cannot remember now all of a sudden. I'm going blank, but I read about it previously, but I cannot remember anymore. Anyway, there was this Germany situation where Germany started actively working against the Catholic Church, for example. And then it was pretty much of a political chaos around that time. Or it was the American Civil War as well, of course, during that time frame. And the president was Lincoln, right? And actually, he abolished slavery as well. So surely, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but the war, and it's not a war with guns and so forth. Probably it's more of an informational type of war, to be frank. But we're gonna see those type of things, unfortunately. Um, and then, in Europe, well, we had the Napoleon War, like um, like Germany actually broke down into singular parts as well. So, and then altogether globally, Germany back in the days was quite a world power, or it had a huge military presence in the world. So obviously it started falling down. So now that strong political or military nation is kind of like the NATO. So is someone going to be stepping out of the NATO? I can actually imagine such things as well. Now, I don't want to be talking about, the past as much because you can look that up yourself as well, what went down during those years. But of course, it's surely what I'm seeing here is a lot of humanitarian actions and a lot of inventions as well when it comes to humanitarian matters or medical matters as well. And Aries actually represents fire also. So this could even indicate kind of like the water is burning. There's a type of things how I can imagine happening as well. So of course, when water burns, we actually kind of run out of water because it evaporates. So water issues could be happening with that too. Okay, so guys, this is a brief analysis on the upcoming Neptune in Aries. Sign up to my channel because I am going to be posting the next day a different video, which is going to be very personal, Neptune through the houses. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.